Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Michael Mogill with Crisp Video Group. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to catch up with you. What are you guys up to at Crisp Video?
You know, it's interesting because right before we started, I know I mentioned that this was when I first started the company. I started the business in 2012, and this was one of the first interviews I ever did, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And it's so interesting to see the difference in what the business was in 2012, which was really a video company, and in what we are today. So we have since evolved from being, a company that we work with. We really work with everybody at the time. We were doing videos for, any business, whether it was the large brands, any industry, any vertical. I mean, just quite frankly, anything. To today, we're solely focused on the legal industry. We work with lawyers and law firm owners, and we've really evolved from being a video company to a video marketing company. And then in the last few years, we've now evolved to being a law firm growth company. So we're really a law firm coaching company. So essentially what we do is we help our clients. We're really their growth partners. So, there's the video to help you differentiate and stand out. And that's content that goes, let's say, on your website or on TV or on social media. There's the marketing to actually get that content seen. So to actually get it in front of your ideal client to get the phone ringing. But, several years ago, we realized that even when you had great video and great marketing and you differentiated and you stood out, if the phone was ringing, but you didn't know how to answer the phone, or if the leadership wasn't right, or if the culture wasn't right in the organization, or if the right, systems and processes weren't in place and so on, that you wouldn't get the same return. I mean, it would all be dependent upon the foundation in the business. So that's how we've since expanded. So when clients work with us, I mean, we can still do just the videos or the videos and the marketing, but now we've really evolved to being really their growth partner. And that to me has been the most exciting thing. So, in 2012, we had 0 law firm clients. Now we work with over 1,000 all across the nation. And it's still, since I started the business, still entirely bootstrapped. We, never had any loans, no investors, no partners, nothing like that. I started the business with $500 to my name, and we've doubled in revenue, team size, clients every single year just over the last 8 years.
Well, it's a great example of what we like to say here is niches bring riches. By kind of really focusing in and becoming an expert in this one channel and this one group, you can really learn about best practices and then serve the heck out of these folks with really depth of knowledge that it's hard to find elsewhere.
Absolutely. And, and the thing is, so people ask me, like, well, did you intend to work with lawyers and law firms? And I'll say, I mean, it happened by accident. I mean, we were working with doctors and dentists and in the tech industry and the financial industry and so on. And what happened in our case was that we had a law firm owner. She came to us. She had no online presence. She was really struggling to stand out and grow her business and really get clients and cases in the door. And what I saw was just that in super competitive, saturated markets, you're often viewed as a commodity. So basically, she did not have the resources to compete with the big TV advertisers, the big billboard advertisers, and so on. But she cared deeply about her clients. She cared about her community. She was a great attorney, but she just wasn't getting out there and wasn't getting noticed and so on. So that's where we helped her first. And, as we worked with her, her business grew tremendously. And then we did it for another lawyer and then another law firm and then another law firm and so on. And what I saw pretty early on was just that this was largely an industry where for the last, arguably 20 years, not a whole lot had changed. I mean, there really wasn't as much innovation, particularly when it came to marketing and advertising. So the shift towards really focusing on social and digital marketing and also more so with the video storytelling rather than, yelling on top of a semi truck and saying, hire me and I'll fight for you. I think that consumers really just didn't have much trust in attorneys. And, and also at that time, and I would even argue even to an extent today, it was very difficult to be able to discern between a good lawyer or a bad lawyer and to know really who to hire, how to make that hiring decision. So this created a great opportunity for, I think, great attorneys to really focus on differentiating and humanizing themselves.
Now, when you're working with that many attorneys, I would imagine that's because they care mostly about dominating their local market. It isn't something they're not necessarily trying to be kind of nationally known attorneys. They're just trying to be known as the go-to attorney in their specialty in their area.
Absolutely. And I would say ideally, if they have that mindset, I think that's where they'll be the most successful, to really focus on also similarly niching down, and not just niching down by practice area, but also maybe even niching down by case type. So, when you see a firm and they say we do everything, family law, criminal defense, personal injury, immigration, everything, they're kind of seen as jack of all trades, but master of none. And we've seen that the most successful firms are deeply focused on an individual practice area, not just personal injury, but maybe trucking accidents, right? Or brain injury or what have you. And because of that, they gain so much credibility and trust that not only are they seen as the go-to expert within their community, but they're also seen as that by other attorneys who refer to them. So, we strongly recommend really having a clear focus and niching down. It makes everything much easier in terms of every other decision in the firm, from marketing and to hiring to, just really in terms of like how you spend your time. But I would say yes. I mean, he's really focusing on dominating that local market. Now, I think once firms start to grow, I mean, there's always the mindset that everyone wants to be the largest firm in America. Well, not everyone, but I think there's that desire to grow. And if my experience in working with so many firms across so many markets has taught me anything, it's just that there's such a value to focus, and be clearly deciding who you're for, and ultimately just being able to focus that energy. Because when we were the company that was working with, doctors and the tech industry and the financial industry and like in brands like Coca-Cola, and we were just doing everything for everyone, our focus was so distributed that we weren't really able to grow as exponentially as we did when we really started to really narrow our focus.
So now, what does kind of that first conversation look like when you're talking to an attorney? Or are you dealing directly with an attorney or their marketing person typically?
Yeah, typically in our case, we deal directly with the attorney. I mean, we work primarily with, I would say, not big law. So, I mean, meaning that it's typically solos or small firms or firms with, 10, 20, 30, 40 lawyers. So, when we're speaking with them, it's generally the firm owner that we're speaking with. And in those conversations, I think the first, where it really starts is it comes down to what is your unique value proposition, meaning that what differentiates you, or what is the reason why someone would choose your firm as opposed to your competition. And it's really thinking about kind of like why you do what you do, and really kind of honing that in to be able to articulate what that message is.
So then are they, like, how open to this conversation are they at this point? I guess there was a pain or else they wouldn't have called you. So they have to be somewhat open, but is this something that in their head they think they have kind of baked and they're challenge you, or are they open to your counsel of being an expert in your field?
So I believe in life, you can be the learner or the lesson. I would say that if they're at a point when they're speaking with us, they're very, very fortunate. I think they're very open to a new approach and perhaps a new perspective. I mean, the reality of it is we say the best cases go to the best marketers, which is, it's an unfortunate truth, because we actually believe that the best cases should go to the best attorneys. But unfortunately, the best marketers are really doing the best job of getting their messaging and their content and really themselves out there in front of the public and really in front of their community, that you can be the best kept secret in your market, but it's going to be very difficult to be successful that way. So if you do care deeply about your clients, if you do really want to make an impact and help them and to serve them, then it is really your duty to get out in front of them and to market effectively and so on. Because otherwise you're going to see attorneys that perhaps may not be as client focused or may not be, let's say in the best interest of certain clients. They're just going to get out in front of them first. So, and I think that bothers a lot of really great attorneys, but I do think the conversation has evolved. I mean, now if you're hearing things, anytime I hear somebody say it, and this is so infrequent now at this point, but when they say, attorneys shouldn't have to advertise, or, there's kind of a long-standing tradition amongst, like, let's say older attorneys that believe that if you just can be a good lawyer, then the business will come and so on. And that's just not the reality anymore. So, that thinking has, the reality at this point is, yes, you need to have an online presence. Yes, you should be differentiating yourself. And then also, I mean, now even taking it further, running your law firm like a business is not even just a competitive advantage anymore. It's a responsibility. So I think it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for law firms to survive let alone thrive, unless they're running their practice like a business, which is a good thing. Meaning that, when you're providing services, like let's say providing great customer service is a business decision. Like if you could provide terrible customer service and be very successful, then there would be no incentive to provide good customer service. But the reality is with organizations like Amazon and, and Starbucks and so on, consumers now have expectations. So, if they're having a poor experience with your firm, they're just going to go somewhere else. I mean, especially many contingency-based firms where it's free to work with them.
Now, when you're working with these law firms, I would imagine that they've tried and failed several other times when it comes to their marketing, that they've tried a variety of kind of maybe gimmicks or, I don't want to say get rich quick because it's not like that, but just things that seem simple, but that maybe are more complex.
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely kind of the people are drawn to silver bullets or, snake oil or holy water or, whatever it is, that pot of gold. What I actually see more commonly is that, firms that are relying on a lot of short-term drivers. So things like, let's say like Google pay-per-click, or they're buying leads or whatever it is that kind of works in the short term, but is always something that you're very much reliant upon, as opposed to focusing on building like a long-term, which is like building a brand and building, a lot of trust within your community and so on. So, because those things, I mean, they take time to build, they require a lot of delayed gratification, but they're the ones that kind of reap the greatest rewards long term. And we saw this even during COVID. So meaning the firms that had invested in building a strong foundation and had, a trusted brand and had a strong culture and, and great customer service and client experience, those firms were largely unaffected and they also kind of thrived during this time. But the firms that rely, strictly on short-term drivers, where if they, they had to buy leads or they were buying, let's say like Google pay-per-click, and there's nothing, there's not necessarily anything wrong with those things, but those are their sole drivers, that when those stopped, their business stopped. And they basically vanished off the face of the earth, like meaning that, if let's say you were a criminal defense attorney and you were relying like almost on like consistent DUIs or something. And then when when the bars were closed or there were curfews or so on, and people just weren't on the roads or people weren't, in DUIs, it's like, if that was solely what you were relying upon, business stopped. So I think it's important to really have a strong foundation that's not solely platform dependent or like really depend on any short-term driver. And usually I think it's those things like those silver bullets that seem so attractive because, they usually represent the lowest amount of risk and the lowest amount of exposure. And, you kind of want that immediate payoff, which I understand. But I think the more perhaps responsible law firm owners are really thinking long-term. They're thinking 5 years out and so on, and they're making decisions based on that versus 1 week out.
And when you're able to have that kind of level of conversation, then everything you're saying makes more sense and you're getting a client that's really buying into your philosophy, not just your tactics.
Absolutely. So I think tactics change, always. I mean, the things that worked last year, there's aspects of them that aren't working this year. I mean, there's things that worked last week that may not be working next week and so on if it's like a specific tactic. And I do think there's a part of maybe the human psyche that's always drawn to like that tinkering or having a list of 20 things to do and believing that if I just get all 20 done, that, they almost confuse activity with effectiveness and progress. But the foundational aspects of a business, and I know that these are the things that for some people just aren't as exciting. But things like, strong leadership, clear accountability, a strong culture, getting, a lot of the details right in terms of like systems and processes and accountability and KPIs and all those different things, which may not sound as attractive or as interesting. They're the things that really drive the business forward. Like if you can solve the people, the example I gave recently was that if you took two law firm owners and one was, let's say they're good at everything. They're great at marketing. They're great at litigating. They're great at, they're very operationally minded. And then you look at another law firm owner and they're terrible at all those things. But that firm owner is absolutely incredible, phenomenal at attracting and retaining the absolute best people. Like which one wins? It's typically the latter. And the reality of it is it comes down to, can you get great people to come into your organization and want to work there and then retain them? And that involves a lot of aspects where you've got to build the type of organization where great people want to work.
Now, when you were building your team, how did you kind of, I don't want to say pivot because it's not necessarily a pivot, but it's an expansion of your services to stay kind of at the leading bleeding edge in terms of having the high quality people that can deliver the results, not just now in their marketing, but in their overall growth. And I'm hearing you say that growth in your mind is obviously not just the growth of revenue, it's the growth of having leaders on the team. It's better engagement, accountability, and hiring the right folks. So when your scope expands like that, how did you build a team that's able to deliver that?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just recognizing that the things that got us to, it's like what got you here won't get you there. And I realized early on, I think, growing a business is a very humbling experience that I think if you come in with ego, like the market will pretty much shadow that very quickly for you. But it's just me realizing that I did not have all the answers. And then I also think it's interesting, when you look at leaders, then, the naivety that we may have at times to believe that we know how to take people to places that we ourselves have never been. So I realized that fairly early. I realized that I was good at very few things, and I was very fortunate in terms of being able to find great people who loved to do the things that had strengths that were weaknesses of mine, but they loved those things. And it allowed me to really focus on a few, core things. So I focus largely on vision and strategy and so on. And I love the sales and marketing aspect. But I would say I've been able to find really great people that love everything else, like great project managers, great operators, just in every other facet of the business. So I think it's more important to really know yourself, and then also just seeking out help. I mean, just meaning that I would ask a lot of questions. When we got to a certain point in the business and things would start to plateau, I knew that there is certain information that I didn't have or knowledge that I needed to gain. So whether it's reading it in books or attending conferences or having mentors or great coaches and so on, that can really save you a lot of pain and heartache, because, the slowest way to learn is really through experience. And I think that sometimes ego, really does create a lot of blind spots. It kind of gets in the way because, I think younger leaders or less experienced leaders perhaps sometimes believe that, if you ever show any sort of vulnerability, it's like this weakness, or if you're asking questions or asking for help, then the people will respect you less. But I found it's actually quite the opposite. Today I'm constantly asking questions, and I ask all sorts of stupid questions, but that's helped us make a lot of progress. And that's actually what we encourage with our clients in our coaching programs too.
Now, let's try to help some attorneys. What's some low-hanging fruit for them that they can do to maybe kind of level up their marketing?
So right off the bat, I mean, I would say, and again, so there won't be any sales pitch from me, but I would say that the very first thing is just being very clear on who you are, who you're for, and who you're not for. So meaning that, just really understanding why would somebody choose to hire us versus our competition, being very clear on that unique differentiator, why you do what you do. Because if your messaging isn't clear, or if your messaging is, let's say, just exactly the same as every other law firm in your market, that's going to be very, very difficult to perhaps stand out in any way, because consumers cannot tell the difference. If you're saying I'm a super lawyer, to consumers, they go to every law firm website, and the majority of them also have that super lawyer award. I think those are awards perhaps designed to showcase to other lawyers maybe. But, I think it's being very, very clear about your differentiator. And if there's not one, perhaps it's very important to then kind of to figure that out and to actually create one and say, here's how we're going to be different. Here's exactly who we're going to help, and here's who we're for, but also who we're not for. I think the best marketing is the type of marketing that takes a stand, which means that you're going to resonate strongly with some people, but not with others. And perhaps the worst marketing is really, vanilla, if you will, in the sense that you try to appeal to everyone because you don't want to leave anybody out. But as a result, you really don't resonate with anyone.
Now, when they're coming up with their kind of point of differentiation, how do you kind of maybe allay some fears that they're well, these people, your client may not have the budget of these other ones where it seems like their brand is everywhere, that you're going to be able to kind of carve that spot out in the mind of the potential of the right client, I guess, for them?
Yeah, well, look, I would say that everybody has their ground zero. We all have to start somewhere. And I mean, with mine, when I started the business, like I said, I started with $500 to my name. So the good news is that I think the barrier to entry now has never been lower. So meaning that, in previous days, the barrier to entry to get on TV or radio or billboards was extremely expensive. I think this is extremely cost prohibitive for, solo attorneys or someone that would just recently start their practice, or even some of the more established ones. But today, you can go online and be on social media or on YouTube or Facebook or what have you, and you can post a video for free, and you can share that with your network or share it on LinkedIn if you're connected with other lawyers. You could even put even a little bit of ad spend behind those videos, let's say on something like Facebook, and reach hundreds of thousands of people. So I think now it really just, you have to look at marketing as really amplification. But it really does start with having a good message, because if you don't have a clear differentiator, if you don't have, let's say, good content, then amplifying bad content is bad every day of the week. So when I get questions, sometimes they're like, well, what day do I post, or what platform do I post on, or like, what time do I tweet, or whatever it is? I actually think those are the wrong questions, because great content is great content 7 days a week. And if you get that right and you understand who your audience is, then, it's a lot easier to reach a lot of people. But it's less about focusing on what time do you post and more about what is our message.
So that's where you spend a lot of your time with your clients, getting clarity in that.
Get clarity there, because it's so that's, when things are not working. So I think when someone gets frustrated a lot of times, I think it's because they skip a lot of steps. So like they go right to the marketing part. So like, meaning let's get it all out there. But if there's more time spent basically figuring out who you are, who you're for, and so on, not only does that help to build confidence, but that then ensures that when you're about to invest all these marketing dollars and actually amplifying that message and getting it out there across everything that you do, that at least that's something that's very intentional, that you went into with, with the right mindset, and that you're not having to go through that discovery process again when things don't work out.
Now, Michael, if somebody wants to learn more, have a more substantive conversation with you or somebody on your team, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can go to our website. It's CRISP video.com. We also have a book. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's called The Game Changing Attorney. So basically everything we've learned about marketing and what our firms have done to succeed, I put it in a book, so you can pick that up. And we also have a podcast similar. It's called The Game Changing Attorney as well, where we literally interview successful law firm owners nationwide, and even non-law firm owners, just industry leaders, and really just ask them, what are the things you're doing that have helped you succeed? So if you're ever interested in, what the top law firm owners in America, what they're doing, what decisions they're making, and so on, I think there's a lot of great learning opportunities just even in that.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Lee.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio. And remember, this work would not be possible without the support of our sponsor, OnPay. Please support them so we can continue to share these important stories.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com.